So today I have a bit of a different video for you. Unless you have been living under a rock, you may have heard how the world erupted after Donald Trump made some comments at a US immigration meeting the other day. In the meeting, US President Donald Trump referred to El Salvador, Haiti, and African nations as shithole countries. Now, as somebody who comes from a so-called shithole country, I was deeply saddened by his comments. And not because, Donald Trump said yet another stupid thing, but about the effects that those comments would undoubtedly have on the people of America and people across the world. So when a powerful nation like the US refers to countries in such a way, it only reinforces the negative stereotypes and the damaging stereotypes that already surround these countries and make it easier to exploit them. It reinforces the idea that there are certain countries that give and there are certain countries that take, when in reality, the flow of money is not from north to south, it's from south to north. And it is in fact developing countries that are developing the developed countries, and that's why they're not being able to develop themselves, because they're too busy propping up the economies of these Western powerhouses. And when Trump makes comments like these, it makes the public more pliable and it makes them more accepting and more willing to ignore injustice and to ignore the exploitation that's already happening today. When immigrants do cross over into Western countries, they're met with this hostility, this anger, and this disgust, because comments like these, people think they're coming from shithole countries, and it's not right. And comments like these devalue the intelligence, the talent, and the integrity and the contributions that the people in these countries give. These countries are essential to the survival of some of these Western countries and have given so much already. And to hear them being described in this way is truly heartbreaking and it's sad. And that's why today, with this video, I want to draw attention to authors from these countries and to highlight their brilliance and their beautiful stories, their sad stories, their funny stories, and just create some positive dialogue around these nations and get people engaging with them and reading about them in a way that allows them to be in charge of their own narrative and their own story. Coming from a shithole country myself, I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk to you about some of the books that I have been really wanting to read from authors who are from shithole countries. I also wanted to turn this into a tag in order to just, create some positive dialogue in the booktube community around these authors. And I'm going to call this tag the Shithole Countries tag. And in it, I want you to talk about 4 or 5 or more if you want, authors who are from the countries that Trump mentioned, and talk about the books that you would like to read from them, or your favorite books from them, or a mixture of the two, which is what I've done. And tag everyone, tag your friends. Without further ado, I will go on, and I'm going to split this video into 2 sections. The first section is going to be the books that I am planning on reading, and the last part is going to be my favorite books from authors from these countries. So the first book I want to talk to you about is called Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. So this book is about a Nigerian couple, Yejide and Akin. The couple fell in love while they were at university and got married. And when they got married, despite the expectations of the culture in Nigeria, at the time, they promised each other that they wouldn't turn it into a polygamous marriage and they would stay wedded to only each other. But as their relationship goes on, 4 years pass and Yejide isn't able to have children. and she's consulted every witch doctor, every fertility doctor, she's prayed, she's begged the gods, and nothing is working. And then one day her family turns up on their doorstep with a young woman who they introduce as Akin's new bride. She is humiliated, she's angry, and she doesn't know what to do. So she takes matters into her own hands and does something maybe she shouldn't have done in order to save her marriage and have a child. Now, I haven't read this book yet, but it looks really interesting, and I just picked it up from work the other day, and I'm really excited to read it. So the next book I want to talk about is called African Psycho, and it's a bit of a nod to American Psycho. And this book is by Alan Mabanko. Alan is from Congo, Brazzaville, and this novel is about a boy who believes he's a psychopath and is trying to kill his girlfriend. And there's this series on Netflix right now, and it's called The End of the Fucking World, and it kind of reminded me of that. And he's trying to kill his girlfriend, and he's not very good at it. And he has enlisted the help of a dead serial killer who he has lengthy conversations with all the time, despite the fact that he's dead, in order to try and kill his girlfriend. And he makes several failed attempts, and it's a bit of dark humor. It's very, very macabre, and yeah, it just seems like a really interesting book, and I can't wait to read it. So the next book I want to talk about is called Behold the Dreamers by Mbolo Mbu. This novel touches on one of the most pervasive issues in a lot of Western countries nowadays, and that is the rampant anti-foreign sentiment and hostility, the growing hostility towards immigrants. And this book is about a Cameroonian immigrant and his wife and his 6-year-old son who moved to America into Harlem in search of a better life for themselves. And when Jende, who is the main character, manages to secure a job as a chauffeur for a very affluent man from a very affluent company, he's overjoyed, and he's even more overjoyed when his wife is able to work for the man's wife. But as they go on, and as the story progresses, they start to realize that something's a little bit amiss with the family that they're working for. And as the family's business declines, a lot of things come out of the woodworks, and it's kind of a tale about immigration and privilege and power and how these things intertwine. The next book I'm going to talk about is called Kumukanda by Kayo Chingonyi. And like myself, this is a Zambian author who is based in England, in London. And this book is a collection of poetry that talk about what it's like to be caught between two worlds and how to find yourself in that. And Kumukanda translates to initiation, and it refers to the name of the rites of passage that a boy from the Luvale tribe has to go through in order to become a man. Kumukanda is a collection of poems that explore this passage, contrasting the ancient ancestry and the contemporary, that explore race, identity, and masculinity, and touching on the unique experiences that face African immigrants in the UK, especially men, and what that means to them when they're growing up. That sounds like a absolutely gorgeous book that I can't wait to read as well. Now I'm going to talk about some of my favourite books, which you of course already know about, but I'll just briefly mention them. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Homegoing by Ya Yasi. This book follows the generations of two sisters. One marries an Englishman and the other is sold into slavery, and it follows their descendants, and each descendant is a new story and a new chapter, and we see how differently their lives turn out, and you know how life can take people in different places. The next book I'm going to talk about is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's Half of a Yellow Sun, and this is a stunning book about the civil war that happened in Nigeria, and how an Englishman and a small village boy and a chief's daughter how their lives are changed completely by the Biafran War, and the effects of war, the traumatic effects of war, and what it's like just to live in a country that is unraveling, and you know what it's like to make it to the end when the fighting stops. So the next book I'm going to talk about is Difficult Woman by Roxane Gay, and this is a collection of short stories surrounding women who have gone through immense trauma and terrible things. Main themes are abortion, twins. There's a story about a white man who is obsessed with black women and black features. There is a story about a woman who is followed by water and moisture, and a story about a woman made of glass. They're all wonderful, beautiful stories, terribly sad and tragic stories, but I think the best thing about them is that they all feel real. They're not trying to tell me something, they're not trying to teach me anything. They're simply talking about women in all their complexity, in all their flaws, and what it's like to just survive. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'm gonna put who I tag below if they even watch this video. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video, and I can't wait to learn about some new authors from all your suggestions and recommendations. So see ya!